to show you today are some herbs that I'm going to sow. I'm not going to sow all of the herbs because some of them don't need to be sown quite yet. But what I'm going to show you today is parsley. There's the giant Italy one, which is lovely. I've also got a curly parsley here as well. I've got some basil, and I've got chives. I've got 2 packs of chives, but they're both exactly the same, so I'm only going to show you one. Now, all of these can be sown from January through to December because you can grow these on a windowsill. But I've got a new herb bed that I need to start filling. So I'm going to buy some plants of some herbs, and I'm also going to sow some from seed. So I will show you the herb bed as it is at the moment. It's not complete, and there's still an awful lot to do, but let me show you that first before I show you how to sow. So here is my new herb patch. I've got some railway sleepers, small ones, round the outside because the soil underneath is very clay, so I need to raise it up to be able to grow, because the soil is it's very hard. Because what was here when I took all of that up, it was solid underneath, and even with a huge amount of digging, it's not going to be good. So some of the herbs will be fine with it, but a lot of them won't. So I thought the easiest thing to do would be to do a raised bed, and then I've got at least 4 inches depth of decent soil. Now, I've only put these down today, so they are in the right place, but I just need to level them off. You'll notice that this goes uphill ever so slightly. So before I put the plants in, I will make sure that I level it off. I'm going to put a layer of manure at the bottom, and then I'm going to fill the rest of the bed with some topsoil, and then I will start to plant the herbs in here. It's 1.3 metres by 2.6 metres. It's right by the back door, which goes into the kitchen. So this is the perfect place for it to be. I do have some plants already. I've got a bay, I've got a few chives, I've got a thyme, a sage and a rosemary, but they're all still in pots. And they will eventually, once I've filled all of this in, they will go in here. Behind me, which you can't see, I doubt, I've got 4 chimney pots. Now in there, because I want to grow some mint, but I don't want to put mint in here because it will spread and it will take over the entire area. I want to keep the mint confined. So mint comes in lots of different varieties. So I'm going to grow a variety in each of these chimney pots. So I will do that. I'll most probably get an apple mint and a normal mint, and I'll see. Pineapple mint's really, really nice. So this is where the herbs are going to go. So that's some of the plants I've got. So let's go back into the greenhouse and I'll show you how I'm going to sow the seeds today. Now, some herbs are annuals, which means that they complete their life cycle in 1 year, and therefore you will have to sow more seeds the following year. Some are biennials, which means that they take 2 years to do their entire life cycle. So you'll be fine for 2 years, but then after 2 years you either let the plant go to seed so that it scatters seed and then new ones come up, or you sow fresh seed every other year. Some are hardy perennials, which means that most of them will die back during the winter, but then they'll come back again bigger than they were the previous year, and they'll keep doing that year on year. Now, chives are a perennial, which these are ones that will then come back year after year after year, and then you'll end up, they'll spread. but they won't spread really quickly like mint does. You'll start with a small clump, and then the following year it will be slightly larger, and then slightly larger the following year. They don't take over, which is always handy. So I will sow a few of those, even though I do have some of those. We'll look at the parsley next. Now, the parsley does say that it's a hardy perennial. Now, a hardy perennial is something that you can actually sow the seed directly outside. You don't need to start it off in the greenhouse. But I do like to start it off in the greenhouse because I just find that the germination rate is much higher. I also tend to find that parsley only lasts about 2 years. So it will then go to seed, and if you leave it, then the seeds will regerminate the following year. So that's fine. And here, basil. Basil is a half-hardy. There's lots of different complicated things. Basil is a half-hardy perennial. Oh, sorry, a half-hardy annual. Now, that means that you have to sow it inside. You can't put it outside until all frost has gone in your area, or just before the frost has gone in your area. Because if you have a light frost, it will be okay, but if you have a hard frost, it will kill the plant. And because it's an annual, you have to sow it every year. These all need to be sown in exactly the same way. So I will show you how I'm going to sow one of them, and then just repeat the process for any other of the seeds that you're going to sow. So here I've got my little seed tray. I've just put a little bit of multi-purpose compost in the bottom of it. If you don't have space to have either a big seed tray or a small seed tray like I have, you can always sow these in a 3-inch pot. Just 3/4 fill the pot with the compost, and then do exactly the same as I am going to do now. Just give this compost just a little gentle pat down, because you want to level it off as much as you can. If there are any large lumps in your compost, remove them. Okay, just like that. And then before we sow the seeds, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this compost just a quick water. Wait for the water to drain all the way through, and then you can start sowing your seeds. Now I'll sow the chives first in this little compartment. So tip some into your hand. Oh, she says, and they're actually in a packet. Oh, dear me. It's been a long day. So open the packet. Make sure your hands are dry. If your hands are wet, then the seeds will stick to your hands, and it will be quite difficult for you to get them off. So tip some seeds into your hand. Now these are the chive seeds. They're little long black seeds. Because they're from the same family as onions and spring onions, they look exactly the same, but they obviously vary ever so slightly. Using your finger and your thumb, just take a pinch, and then moving your thumb and your finger backwards and forwards, move your hand round, and you will slowly scatter the seeds on the compost. If some land a little bit too close to each other, don't worry about that, that's not a problem. So put your seeds on the soil. When you've got all your seeds on the soil, all you need to do now is to just cover them over with a little bit of compost. Don't push this compost down, just gently sprinkle it over. If you want to use vermiculite, then do use vermiculite. I just use compost like this. make sure that you've spread it over so all the seeds are covered. There is about 1/2 centimetre of compost on top of the seeds, so not much at all. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to label this, and I will do the rest of them, and then I will show you when I've finished. Now I just thought I would show you these. These are the basil seeds. They look very similar to the chive seeds, but they're slightly shorter and they're more sort of plumper. So I'll just sprinkle these basil seeds on to the damp compost. And these seeds here, these are the Giant of Italy parsley seeds. Again, they're long and they're sort of half moon shaped, but they're very light in colour. So I'll sprinkle these on one section of the compost, most probably on the big one here, and then I'll do the curled parsley on the smaller one. And these are the other parsley seeds. As you can see, they look very, very similar. So until they start to grow and start to produce leaves, it's actually very difficult to know which variety you've got just from the seeds. So I'll scatter these and then I'll show you them all when they're done. So here they all are done, labelled, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a propagator lid on the top of them. This will just keep them a little bit warmer. If you don't have a propagator lid or you're growing them in a 3-inch pot, then just attach a little plastic cellophane bag across the top with an elastic band just to hold it in place, and that will work perfectly well. If you are germinating these inside the house, then put them on a sunny windowsill. But hopefully in about 7 to 10 days these will start to germinate and they will start to poke through the soil, and when they do, then I'll show you. Well, that's the herb seeds. Well, some of them sown. I'm sure there'll be more as I go through, but I will keep you updated on their progress. I won't need to water those for at least 2 or 3 days. It depends what the weather is like outside. If the weather outside is, as it is now, is a little bit damp, then I most probably won't need to water them for about 4 days. If you're unsure, remove the lid and then gently touch the compost with your hands. If it feels damp, don't water. Only water if it feels dry, because if you overwater your seedlings, then they could rot and then they won't germinate and then you won't have anything. So just keep an eye on them. They're very small, they're very delicate, so just check them every day just to check on them and just to make sure that they don't need any watering. Water with a very fine hose as well, because you don't want a hose that has massive holes in it and therefore lets out lots of water. As they start to germinate, they will be very delicate, and if they're hit by a load of water, suddenly they could break off. So you could, if you wanted to, use a fine spray, but hopefully you'll be able to find a very fine watering can rose. Well, I hope you found that useful, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.